My name's Jeremy Reynolds. I'm from the Department of Planning in Melbourne. My colleague Beatrice DeRody works with me here. And our main job is to do population projections for Victoria, which are used for government planning, for planning of education services, health services, land use planning and so on. Now, to do population projections, we really have to know everything. We should try to know everything about the economy of Victoria, how it differs from place to place, about the society, the way we form households and so on. Everything that drives population change. And of course, as we do this job, there's lots of spin-offs. As we understand more and more about Victoria, there's more and more stories to tell which are relevant for policy and for service delivery. So what I want to take you through today is 5 issues which we think are important for this region, or 5 points. The first you see there is actually the challenge of a growing population. This region's population is growing, but the message is, of course, it's very uneven. But if you look at how the population has changed over the last 30 years, you can see that there's some places like Mildura and Bendigo where there's been very significant population growth. Some of the towns closest to Melbourne or along the Murray River, there's been population growth. But in others, you see those red dots there, the small towns, often in dryland farming areas, there's actually been losses of population. So the challenge is, in some places, there's been an increasing demand for services. In other places, there's been a decreasing demand for services. And that's likely to continue, because when we do projections for Victoria, we just look at the trends and say, how will those trends take us to the future? And we're saying there'll be 440,000 extra people in regional Victoria, and we think the growth will be distributed like that on that map. You can see there's big blobs, blue blobs in the regional centres and places around Melbourne, but actually quite small amounts of growth elsewhere. Now, is that the future that we want? If it's not what we want, how do we go about bending the trend? The second thing is, it's a bit personal here, it's about ageing, because I'm one of these baby boomers on the cusp of moving into retirement. And there's a lot of people like me, because there's a transformation going on in Australia and Victoria and in this region, that if you go back 40 years, there were high proportions of people, of children, the green segments there, that we had about 1/3 of the population were children. But that's declined over time, because in the last 20 or 30 years, those children have moved into the workforce, with high proportions of people in the workforce, paying taxes, being employed, doing things. But now we're going through this change where those baby boomers are now entering old age. And it's happening, of course, across the world. And it's a big challenge for the world, for Australia, Victoria, and for this region. Because if we look in this region, so look at regional Victoria, in the regional centres actually have a very balanced population, very similar to Victoria as a whole. But it is ageing. The lighter lines there, the lighter area, shows how it's ageing. And you can see there's significant growth in the older age groups at the top of the charts. But in rural areas, it's very different, because there's this deficit of young adults, but the ageing is actually stronger there. And there's also an ageing of the aged, because this shows here who are the people who actually need services, who need assistance with communication and mobility. And it's very heavily skewed towards the older age groups, the old, if you like, the people aged 85 plus. So what we face the prospect of in the future is not only just more old people, and more old people in the country, but older old people in the country. And that's going to be a real challenge about how we provide services to them, which is a nice segue into regional centres, because a lot of us, old people, young people, we all are demanding more and more specialist services, health services, education services, retail, financial. Where do you get those specialist services? You get them in regional centres. So it's important to know how people can access regional centres, and how also businesses in regional centres and government in regional centres accesses their clients. Because a lot of their clients are out in the regions, in small towns and in rural areas. And that is just the population of this region, the population of towns in this region. You can see how big Bendigo and Mildura are compared with the other town populations of their regions. They've become very dominant places, which leads me to the small towns. The moral about small towns is you can look at the data. We've got lots of data about small towns, but when you go into the towns, you realise every town is different. Every town has its own story to tell. The old adage is, seen one town, seen one town. They're all different. And very importantly, I think Peter Ryan was saying this a couple of weeks ago, that each town has its own destiny. It needs to see its own future. It needs to engage with itself and actually empower its community to see its way forward. And government is there to assist that community see its future and find out how it can move forward. Lastly, very simply, is we have a lot of information. I've only just scratched the surface, not even touched it, just scratched it, I think, or touched it, not scratched it this time. You can get more information from us. What we're trying to do is tell the ultimate story, right, which is mixing together the qualitative information, what people are saying, what they're thinking, with what the stats are telling us. We're also looking at what's happening globally in terms of things like technological change and how it impacts on this region, but also what's happening locally. So we're trying to piece together this jigsaw, this picture of change. And that's where you can get more information. It's on the cards we've distributed, those little postcards, and I'm happy, Beatrice and I'll be happy to talk to you anytime after this shopping session has finished. So thank you, and I'll hand you over now to, Sharon here.
Within Central Goldfields Shire, we are no longer going to be defined by our statistics. We're working together to create a positive future story, and we're building bridges from today to our future story. Our future story is that we aspire and achieve a full life. Where we facilitate economic development, we want to have it that our whole community can participate in the economic development. Let me demonstrate this to you through Hope's story. Hope is a mother of 3 in her mid-20s. While at the swimming pool last summer, she met the Go Goldfields Children's Literacy Facilitator. They discussed reading to babies. Hope had never thought about reading to her baby. After all, she couldn't even sit up yet. Later that month, Hope met a friend who was having a baby, and her friend told her she had heard the same thing at the antenatal clinic. Hope decided to give her friend a book at the baby shower. At her maternal and child health appointment, Hope learned that the library was offering baby rhyme time. The maternal and child health nurse organised a pram walk to the library before the rhyme time sessions and got the mums to wander around the library. Hope and her friends felt comfortable about going to the baby rhyme time a few weeks later. Hope found that when she dropped her eldest at kindergarten or her middle child at childcare, all the services seemed to have an extra focus on language development and pre-literacy. They were also offering support to her on how she could do it at home. The kinder teacher told Hope that all the early years teachers had received training from the Australian Literacy Foundation from Sydney. This helped set a high, consistent standard across the Shire, across all the childcare centres, the kindergartens and schools. Wow, thought Hope. Whoever would have thought we would get such experts in Maryborough? During this time, Hope realised that some mums were like her. They just needed information. She noticed, however, that some mums seemed less confident with so many challenges in their lives that their children's language and literacy development seemed to be a lower priority or just too hard. Hope realised that all the mums wanted the best for their children. She got enough interest to apply for a $1,000 community grant by listing the notion of having a mothers group on Facebook. She had the idea that the mums who were able to could support the mums who were struggling. Hope was then recognised by Go Goldfields as a potential future leader in the community. She was then invited to help build the future story of the community. Hope finds that now she is more excited about the future for herself and her children. She's glad to be raising her children in this community. This is just one of the stories we've got in our community. Our community is really going somewhere at the moment, and we within Go Goldfields are wanting to make sure that we're a part of that and can help our community achieve the best that we can be out of our current economic development.